I never thought one quiet evening could rewrite everything I knew about myself. The clock was ticking softly in my living room, the kind of sound that usually fades into the background, but that night, it felt louder than my own heartbeat. I sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the half-open box that had just been delivered. My name was written across the top, Mr. Adrian Clark, bold and proper, the kind of name that fit a man who wore suits, spoke carefully, and never once stepped out of line. But the moment I opened that box, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't just what was inside, it was the way it looked at me. A folded pastel dress, delicate lace at the edges, and a soft scent of lavender that made my chest tighten. I didn't order it. There was no note. No sender. Just that one beautiful dress, lying there as if it knew something I didn't want to admit. I laughed it off at first, trying to shake off the unease. Maybe a delivery mistake, I told myself. Someone else's parcel. But when I checked the label again, my address was there. My name. My signature required. It wasn't a mistake. I placed the dress aside, pretending not to notice how light my fingers felt when they touched the fabric. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept turning over the same thought. Why did it feel like it belonged to me? I tried to focus on work the next day, but I caught my reflection in the elevator mirror. My face looked tired, distant, but there was something else too, a faint trace of longing I couldn't explain. By the time I came home, I couldn't resist anymore. I opened the box again. The fabric shimmered faintly under the lamplight, almost inviting. I held it against me, just to feel it. My heart pounded, half out of guilt, half out of something that felt frighteningly close to relief. I'd spent so long being who everyone expected me to be, reliable, composed, Mr. Clark. But in that moment, I caught a glimpse of someone else in the mirror, softer, curious, and undeniably me. I didn't understand it, but I couldn't look away. That night, I finally gave in to curiosity. I slipped it on. The material was cool against my skin, unfamiliar yet comforting. My reflection blinked back at me, hesitant at first, then steady. For the first time, I didn't see a man pretending. I saw someone waking up. Someone I'd been hiding under layers of expectation. My pulse raced, but there was no fear left. Only a strange, gentle peace. I told myself it was a one-time thing. Just an experiment. Just curiosity. But as I carefully hung the dress back up, I realized something that made my stomach twist. I didn't want to take it off. The next morning, I woke with the scent of lavender still clinging faintly to me. I tried to ignore it, to go through my day like normal. But every reflection, shop windows, car mirrors, my phone screen, felt like it was waiting for someone else to appear. Someone I was too afraid to name. And then, a message arrived in my inbox from an unknown sender. "Do you like the gift, Adrian?" My hands froze over the keyboard. My heart stopped for a beat. The message continued, almost playfully. "It's time you stopped pretending. You were never meant to be Mr. Clark." I stared at the words until the letters blurred. My whole body felt light and cold at once. Whoever sent that message knew something that I hadn't told a single soul. And for the first time, I didn't know if I was scared of being found out or finally being seen. I must have read that message 100 times, my mind looping between disbelief and dread. Who could have sent it? No one knew. No one could have known. I sat frozen at my desk, the faint glow of the computer screen washing over my face, as if it were exposing me. My throat tightened as I hovered over the keyboard, wanting to reply but afraid of what might come back. Finally, I typed just one word. Who? The reply came almost instantly. Someone who knows the real you. The words sent a shiver down my spine. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling as my heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself it was a prank, but deep down, I couldn't deny the strange pull I felt toward the voice on the screen. It was like whoever it was could see right through the carefully constructed version of me that I'd been holding together for years. The next morning, I told myself to move on. I deleted the email, shut down my computer, and threw myself into work. But as the hours passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Every reflection in every glass surface felt just slightly wrong, like my own eyes were holding secrets from me. That evening, I came home to find another package waiting by my door. Smaller this time. No name, no return address. My pulse quickened as I picked it up. Inside was a simple note, written in elegant handwriting. For the woman you're becoming. Beneath the note lay a delicate silver necklace with a tiny pendant shaped like a heart. I stared at it for a long time, my chest tightening. I should have been afraid, but instead, I felt warmth spread through me. I clasped it around my neck and caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Somehow, the necklace fit perfectly, resting just above where my heartbeat fluttered wildly. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself changing. Not outwardly at first, but inside. I started speaking more softly, catching myself in moments of gentleness I'd once forced myself to suppress. I began noticing the way my gestures softened, how I moved my hands when I talked, how I stood in front of mirrors longer than before, not out of vanity, but curiosity. At work, people began to notice small things. A coworker asked if I'd been trying a new skincare routine. Another said I seemed lighter, whatever that meant. I brushed it off, but inside, I felt both terrified and thrilled. It was as though something had begun blooming in me, quietly, insistently, and I couldn't stop it anymore. One night, I came home to another email. "You're doing beautifully. She's starting to show." My breath caught. I wanted to ask who she was, but I already knew. The part of me that had been locked away, denied, reshaped to fit the name Mr. on my office door. That hidden softness, that quiet voice I'd ignored for years, was finally stepping into the light. Still, a part of me resisted. What if this was all a trick? What if someone was manipulating me? I decided to test it. I replied, "Who are you really?" The answer came slower this time, as if whoever it was had been waiting for that exact question. "I'm the part of you that stopped pretending." I stared at those words until I felt tears burn behind my eyes. There was no way to explain what I felt. Fear, yes, but also a strange relief, like a door had been unlocked deep inside me. I turned off the lights, sat in front of the mirror, and looked at myself in the dark. My reflection blinked back, calm, knowing. And for just a moment, I thought I saw her smile, faintly, sadly, from behind my own eyes. The next few days felt like living inside a dream, or maybe a haunting. Every time I passed a mirror, I felt a flicker of movement that wasn't mine. Not violent or frightening, just aware. Observing. It was like my reflection was growing more confident while I grew more uncertain. I couldn't tell if I was losing control or finally gaining something I'd never had before. At work, the world went on like nothing had changed, but I couldn't focus. I kept thinking about the email, the dress, the way it felt to see myself differently. It was as though something in me had been unsealed, and no matter how I tried to close it, the light kept spilling out. I started wearing softer colors under my suits, pastel shirts, subtle touches that no one noticed but me. But I noticed, and that was enough. Then came the moment that changed everything. It was late evening. Rain tapped gently on my apartment window as I sat at my desk, lost in thought. I hadn't heard from the mysterious sender in days. Part of me missed their messages, more than I wanted to admit. When my phone finally buzzed, my heart leapt, like a secret I didn't want but couldn't live without. It wasn't an email this time. It was a photo of me, standing in front of my bedroom mirror, wearing a lavender dress. I froze. My pulse raced as I stared at the image. The lighting, the angle, it was my room. My reflection. But I hadn't taken it. My hands trembled as I scrolled, and a message followed. "You looked beautiful that night. Don't be afraid to see her again." I wanted to scream. How could anyone have known? Who was in my apartment? I bolted upright and ran to my bedroom. The mirror stood there, silent and still, reflecting only me, trembling, pale, and breathless. I checked every corner, every shadow, every locked window. Nothing. But then I saw it. The necklace. The heart pendant I'd left on the dresser earlier that day was gone. I pressed my hand to my throat. My pulse thudded against my fingertips as I searched the room. Then, in the faint reflection of the mirror, I saw it, hanging delicately around my reflection's neck. Only, I wasn't wearing it. My body went cold. I stumbled backward, my breath catching as I stared into the glass. The reflection didn't move for a heartbeat too long. And then, almost gently, she tilted her head, just slightly, and smiled. I don't remember how long I stood there, frozen in silence, staring at the impossible. When I blinked, she was gone, just me again, pale and shaking. I backed away, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark until dawn painted the room gray. The next morning I told myself it was stress, hallucination, fatigue, anything. I went through my day on autopilot, but the thought wouldn't leave me. What if she wasn't haunting me? What if she was me? That night, I came home and faced the mirror again. My voice trembled as I whispered, "Who are you?" For a second, there was nothing. Then, the faintest sound, not out loud, but inside my chest, a whisper that felt like my own heartbeat answering me. "You already know." My reflection's lips didn't move, but I could feel the truth sinking in. The woman in the mirror wasn't an intruder. She was the part of me I'd buried under years of pretending, of being Mr. when everything inside me screamed for something softer, freer, truer. I didn't sleep that night, but I didn't feel afraid anymore either. Somehow, I knew this was only the beginning. For days after that night, I found myself living in two worlds. There was the world outside, where I smiled politely, held doors open, answered emails, wore pressed shirts and polished shoes. And then there was the other world, the quiet one that came alive whenever I stepped into my apartment and faced the mirror. That space felt heavier now, charged with something unseen but alive. The reflection wasn't wrong anymore. It didn't feel like a trick of light or imagination. It felt like recognition. Every time I stood there, I noticed new subtleties, a softness in my expression, a lightness in my stance. Sometimes I thought I saw traces of makeup where there was none. Sometimes the pendant seemed to glint brighter, even though it hadn't been on my neck since that night. One evening, while scrolling through my inbox, I saw a new message. Just a single line. "She wants to meet you properly." My breath hitched. The message came from the same address. No subject line, no attachments, nothing else. I stared at it, waiting for more, but the screen stayed blank. I shut my laptop, leaned back, and tried to calm my heartbeat. Maybe it was time to stop engaging with this, whatever it was. But that phrase, "meet you properly," kept echoing in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the apartment felt amplified. Every whisper of wind sounded like words half-formed. Eventually, I got up and wandered into the living room, barefoot and half-dreaming. The lavender dress still hung in the closet. I stood in front of it, fingers tracing the fabric as though I could draw comfort from it. When I looked up, the mirror across the room caught my gaze again. I froze. She was there, but not copying me this time. She stood on the other side, calm, poised, wearing the same dress. Her eyes were softer, but there was something knowing in them, something I didn't dare look away from. I whispered, "What do you want?" She tilted her head, lips parting just slightly. For a moment, the air in the room grew thick, heavy, like time itself had slowed down. I felt a pressure in my chest, not painful, just awakening. Then I heard her, not through sound, but through sensation, through the pulse that throbbed between us. To be seen. I stepped closer, my hand trembling as I reached toward the glass. The moment my fingertips met the cold surface, warmth bloomed from the other side. It wasn't just reflection, it felt real, alive, as though she was pressing back, palm to palm. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "Who are you really?" I asked again, voice shaking. Her expression softened, almost sad, almost kind. Then she whispered back, barely audible, "I'm who you've always been." The next thing I knew, the mirror rippled, not breaking, not shattering, but moving like water. The reflection dissolved into light for a split second, and when it stilled, the room around me looked different. I blinked, heart racing. The air smelled faintly of lavender again, but stronger this time, richer. The light seemed gentler, softer, like everything had shifted just slightly towards something I didn't understand yet. When I finally looked back at my reflection, I didn't see her anymore. I saw us. My face, but different. My eyes wider, expression open, delicate. The harsh edges of my jaw softened in the low light. I didn't look like Mr. Clark anymore. I didn't look like anyone I'd ever been. And then, as if the room itself had exhaled, the pendant appeared again, lying on the dresser beside the mirror. I reached for it slowly and held it in my palm. The metal was warm. That night, I wore the dress again, not out of curiosity, not out of confusion, but out of quiet acceptance. The reflection smiled, and this time, so did I. When I turned off the lights, I felt something peaceful in the dark. Not fear, not loss. Just the faint hum of transformation beginning to take root, gentle, unstoppable, and completely real. The days that followed felt like waking up from a long, heavy dream I hadn't realized I was in. The world around me hadn't changed, but I had. Every small moment felt newly alive, textured in ways I'd never noticed before. The sound of rain on my window, the warmth of morning light on my skin, the softness of fabric against my shoulders, they all carried meaning now. It was as if I'd been living behind glass my entire life, and now I was finally breathing open air. But there was also a strange stillness in me, a quiet fear of what would happen if anyone else saw what was happening. I went to work wearing the same clothes as always, speaking with the same voice, keeping my movements carefully restrained, but each day it became harder to hide. People noticed. At first it was subtle. A co-worker mentioned that my voice sounded different, lighter somehow. Another joked that I seemed too happy lately, like it was something unusual. I laughed it off, deflecting as always, but behind that laugh was a truth I was still learning to name. At home, the mirror had become a presence I could no longer ignore. It wasn't that she appeared every night, she didn't. But I always felt her there, patient, waiting. The lavender scent never fully left my apartment anymore. It clung to my clothes, my hair, even the pages of my notebooks. Then one evening, I came home to find another note, this time slipped under the door. "You're almost ready. Let her live." No name, no sender, just those words. My hands trembled as I held the note. I didn't know if I should be terrified or comforted. Whoever was sending these messages, or whatever force was behind them, it was guiding me towards something inevitable. That night, I stood before the mirror again. I'd promised myself I wouldn't, that I'd take a break, ground myself in reality. But curiosity, or maybe destiny, pulled me back. The moment I looked into the glass, I felt the now familiar calm. The reflection looked more and more like the woman I'd seen before, and less like the man I used to be. Her eyes, my eyes, were clear, almost luminous. I whispered, "What does it mean to let her live?" The lights in the room flickered softly, as though the question itself carried power. I took a deep breath, clutching the pendant in my hand, and slowly began to speak to her, or to myself. I told her about the years of pretending, of suppressing small instincts, the way I'd stopped myself from smiling too softly, from moving my hands with grace, from wearing the colors I loved because they didn't fit. I confessed every secret thought I'd buried under obligation and fear. And as I spoke, I saw her mouthing the words with me, not mocking, not echoing, mirroring perfectly. The longer I talked, the more the air around me changed. It wasn't cold this time, it was warm, almost comforting. I felt something shift deep inside my chest, a tension I hadn't even known I was carrying beginning to release. My reflection seemed to glow faintly, her features softening into clarity. Then, just as I was about to step back, I heard her voice again, faint, like wind slipping through a half-open window. "You don't have to hide anymore." I felt tears gather in my eyes, and I whispered back, "But what if I lose everything?" The reflection didn't answer with words this time. She simply smiled, that same knowing, gentle smile, and lifted her hand. I mirrored the motion instinctively, our palms meeting on the glass. For a heartbeat, warmth pulsed between us, almost like energy, like understanding. When I finally stepped away, I noticed something new. My own reflection lingered a moment too long, her smile remaining after mine had faded. Then, slowly, she whispered something I'd never forget. "You won't lose yourself. You'll finally find her." That night, I fell asleep with a pendant around my neck and the lavender dress hanging beside my bed, as if both were waiting for the moment I'd finally be ready to wear them without fear. And for the first time in years, I dreamt not of hiding, but of becoming. I woke up before sunrise. The room was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. A faint lavender glow, impossible, almost dreamlike, drifted along the edges of the curtains, and for a long time, I simply lay there, my fingers resting on the silver pendant. It was warm against my skin, as if it carried a heartbeat of its own. Something inside me whispered that this day would change everything. I moved to the mirror again, carefully, hesitantly, like someone approaching an altar. My reflection was ordinary at first, hair tousled, eyes heavy from sleep, a man still wearing the remnants of yesterday's world. But the longer I stood there, the more that illusion dissolved. My reflection seemed softer, her expression more serene, as though the woman in the mirror had been waiting all night for me to return. The lavender dress still hung nearby. Its fabric shimmered faintly in the dawn light, catching hints of lilac and silver. My hand trembled as I reached for it, feeling the delicate threads against my fingertips. It wasn't just clothing anymore. It was a promise, a memory, an invitation. I hesitated. The old part of me, the one built on restraint and fear, still whispered warnings. What if someone finds out? What if this is too much? What if this isn't real? But then I remembered her voice. "You won't lose yourself. You'll finally find her." So I slipped the dress on. The fabric embraced me gently, falling in soft waves around my legs. It didn't feel like wearing a disguise. It felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. My reflection's eyes shimmered with quiet joy, and I realized I was smiling. Not the cautious, polite smile I gave to others, but something deeper. Then I noticed something else. The pendant had started to glow faintly, matching the soft light in the mirror. For a moment, I thought it was a trick of my imagination, but the glow grew stronger, humming faintly, resonating in the air around me. And that's when I heard it. A voice, familiar, calm, and infinitely kind, filled the room like a whisper carried on wind. "Now you see her. Now let her see the world." I gasped, clutching the pendant. The mirror rippled, not shattering, not breaking, but rippling, as if the barrier between worlds had softened. My reflection moved just slightly out of sync, her lips curving into a smile before mine did. The light expanded, surrounding me in a cocoon of warmth. I didn't feel afraid anymore. I felt known. It was as though every unspoken truth, every hidden wish, every quiet longing I'd ever had was being acknowledged by something greater than me. When the light faded, I stood in silence, breathing hard. Everything looked the same and yet different. The air felt lighter. My voice, when I whispered, "Is it really me?" sounded softer, more natural, resonant with the gentleness I'd always tried to suppress. The pendant cooled against my skin. The mirror was still again, only showing my reflection. No ghostly figure, no separate presence. Just me. But I knew, somehow, that she was no longer in the mirror. She was in me. Later that day, I walked outside wearing a simple coat over the lavender dress. My heart pounded with every step, but no one stared. No one whispered. The city was alive with noise and color, and for once, I didn't feel like a stranger among it. I stopped at a cafe, the same one I used to visit every morning. The barista, who'd served me for years, looked up and smiled warmly. "You look happy today," she said. I almost cried. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was performing happiness. I was happy, quietly, profoundly, unshakably. I found a seat by the window, the pendant glowing faintly beneath my collar. Outside, the world moved on. ordinary, unaware. But inside me, something extraordinary had begun. The man I used to be wasn't gone. He had simply evolved into truth, into her. And in that quiet cafe, sipping my morning coffee, I whispered to my reflection in the window, "Hello, Mrs. Me." The days that followed were surreal. Everything looked the same. The streets I walked, the people I passed, the desk I sat at, yet every detail shimmered with a quiet difference. It was as if the world hadn't changed, but the lens through which I saw it finally had. At first, I was careful. I wore soft sweaters and long coats that concealed the new wardrobe quietly building in my closet. Each piece I'd chosen, flowing blouses, delicate earrings, pastel scarves, carried a weight of meaning that only I could feel. They were small acts of courage disguised as fabric. The pendant remained close to my heart. It pulsed faintly from time to time, like a second heartbeat, especially when I felt uncertain. I began to notice patterns. Whenever fear tried to take hold, the pendant grew warm, almost as if it refused to let me retreat. One morning, as I stood before the mirror adjusting a simple lavender blouse, a sudden thought slipped into my mind. What if this isn't transformation but remembrance? It struck me deeply, the idea that maybe I wasn't becoming someone new at all. Maybe I was remembering someone I'd always been, someone buried beneath layers of expectation and fear. I brushed a strand of hair away from my cheek. The gesture felt instinctive now. The doorbell rang. My heart leapt. Through the small glass panel, I saw a familiar silhouette, my coworker, Lydia. She was holding a folder and smiling faintly, unaware of the storm inside me. I froze for a moment, my hand hovering near the doorknob. The pendant grew warm again, urging calm. I opened the door slowly. "Hey," Lydia said brightly. "I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop these off." Her eyes flicked over me briefly. My blouse, my subtle makeup, the soft tone of my hair, but there was no shock, no judgment. Only quiet curiosity. "You look really nice today," she said finally. The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were rare, but because they felt real. I managed a smile, shy and trembling. "Thank you." She tilted her head slightly. "You seem different lately. Happier, maybe?" There was again that word, happier. People had started saying it more often, as if they could sense something blooming from within me even before I could explain it myself. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think I am." When she left, I stood in the doorway for a long time, my fingers brushing the pendant again. It felt alive, like it was humming approval. That night, I sat on the bed with the pendant resting in my palm. "Who are you?" I whispered. The air grew still. Then, faintly, like a voice echoing from another time, I heard, "Not who, what you always were." A shiver ran through me, not of fear, but recognition. The pendant wasn't changing me. It was revealing me. I lay back, thinking of all the moments I'd hidden behind a mask of certainty, the times I'd laughed too loud to seem confident, the clothes I'd worn like armor, the reflection I'd avoided meeting for too long. All of it had been camouflage, not identity. And now, piece by piece, it was falling away. Over the next few weeks, I began to take small, deliberate steps. I updated my name on a few old accounts, choosing something that felt right, soft, melodic, authentic. I practiced my voice until it matched the warmth I heard in my thoughts. I started writing in a journal, each entry beginning with, "Dear me," and ending with gratitude for the courage to exist. But courage isn't steady, it flickers. And one evening, it nearly went out. It happened at work. Someone, a man I'd known for years, made a careless comment when he saw me in a light summer dress. His words weren't cruel, but they were heavy with the kind of mockery that slices without needing to shout. For a moment, the room spun. I felt that old instinct again, to apologize for being myself, to shrink back into invisibility. Then, I felt the pendant grow hot against my skin, almost burning, as if it refused to let me retreat into shame. I straightened, looked him in the eyes, and said quietly, "It's just me, still me." He blinked, caught off guard, and looked away. The moment passed, small, unremarkable, yet I knew it marked a quiet victory. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't even feel angry. I just stood by the window, watching my reflection in the glass as city lights shimmered behind her. For the first time, I didn't see a version of myself to fix or explain. I saw someone whole, someone becoming. The morning light poured into my room with a soft golden hue, spilling over the edges of the curtains, touching everything it found: my vanity table, the pendant, the scattered makeup brushes, the soft cardigan hanging on the chair. Everything in that small room carried fragments of the person I was becoming. But that morning, it wasn't just another day. Something in me had shifted. I woke up earlier than usual, heart quietly restless, as though my body already knew change was in the air. When I looked into the mirror, there was a strange sense of calm. My reflection no longer startled me. It welcomed me. I no longer questioned who looked back. She felt real, her eyes alive with quiet strength, her lips shaped with tenderness. As I ran a brush through my hair, I noticed how each strand fell differently now, softer, freer, as though it too had learned to let go of old weight. I smiled at my reflection, small and trembling, then whispered, "Hi, you." That single phrase, so simple, carried the warmth of acceptance I had been chasing for years. I got dressed slowly, deliberately. A soft peach blouse, a long cream skirt, a touch of mascara, not to hide but to highlight. Everything felt purposeful, every motion intentional. I wasn't performing anymore. I was existing. When I walked outside, the world felt brighter. Or maybe it was me. The air smelled like rain, fresh and alive. I carried a small tote bag and walked toward the cafe near the old bookstore, a place I used to sit alone for hours, pretending to read while hiding behind a laptop screen. This time, I walked with my head up. Inside, the barista smiled. "Morning, Mississippi." "Miss." The word lingered in my chest long after I found my seat. I didn't correct him. I didn't even flinch. I just smiled back. The pendant glimmered faintly beneath my blouse, warm and reassuring. I reached up to touch it lightly, as if to say, "We did it." But even peace carries its own kind of fear. Because with every moment of acceptance comes the quiet whisper, what if it's taken away? That thought haunted me for days, until I met someone who unknowingly silenced it. Her name was Clara, a woman in her 30s with sharp wit and kind eyes. We met by accident when she dropped her coffee at the crosswalk, and I instinctively offered her tissues. A small thing, but it led to conversation, laughter, and eventually companionship. She worked in design, dressed with casual confidence, and spoke as though she saw right through facades. With her, I didn't feel like I had to hide or explain. One afternoon, as we walked through a park lined with autumn leaves, she looked at me and said, "You have this way of carrying yourself like someone who finally stopped pretending." I froze mid-step. The words pierced deeper than she could have known. She smiled softly, noticing my silence. "That's a good thing, by the way." We sat on a bench, watching the light flicker between tree branches. I felt something stir inside me, a mix of gratitude and fear. Gratitude because she saw me. Fear because being seen was still new. I turned the pendant in my hand, the faint humming now familiar. "Do you ever feel like you've been two people your whole life?" I asked her. Clara tilted her head. "Not two," she said after a pause. "Just one, hidden and unhidden." The words settled in my heart like a key clicking into a lock. I nodded slowly, tears threatening but not falling. That night, I stood before my mirror again. But this time, I didn't just see reflection. I saw transformation not as change, but as arrival. Every flicker of doubt, every quiet tear, every whispered affirmation had led me here. And yet a shadow lingered. It began subtly, the pendant flickering more than usual, its warmth turning cold at night. Sometimes I woke up to find it glowing faintly on the nightstand, pulsing with light that didn't seem entirely alive or mechanical. One night, I heard a whisper, not from the pendant this time, but from the mirror. A faint, trembling voice. "You're not finished yet." My breath caught. I turned toward the glass, heart pounding. My reflection looked back, But her eyes, they moved just a moment after mine did. I stepped closer, my pulse roaring in my ears. "Who are you?" I whispered. The reflection smiled faintly, her lips curling before mine did.
"You," she said.
But not quite yet. The pendant glowed again, blindingly bright this time, and the world around me began to ripple, as if my room was melting into something else, something unseen. The hum grew louder, wrapping around me like a storm of light. And in that instant I realized transformation wasn't over. It had only begun. The light from the pendant filled the entire room, soft yet blinding, warm yet almost unbearable. I shielded my eyes, heart hammering, as everything around me blurred into white noise. The air pulsed, vibrating with a rhythm that wasn't sound but feeling. Then, slowly, the glow faded, and silence fell. When my eyes adjusted, I saw something impossible. The room was the same but not quite. My reflection in the mirror was no longer synced to my movements. She stood there, still as a painting, eyes alive, studying me with a strange blend of affection and sorrow. I took a step closer. "What are you?" My voice trembled. Her lips moved first this time. "What you're meant to become."
A chill crawled up my spine.
I reached out, and the moment my fingertips brushed the glass, it rippled like water. The pendant pulsed once more, and I felt a sharp tug, like something pulling at my chest from the other side. I stumbled back, gasping. "What do you want from me?" I whispered. She smiled faintly, a smile I recognized. It was my own, but softened by understanding I didn't yet have. "Not from you," she said quietly. "For you." My knees weakened. The pendant's hum steadied, calmer now. I didn't know whether to be afraid or comforted. Then she lifted her hand, and through the mirror, I saw flashes of moments that weren't memories, yet felt achingly familiar. A child staring into a mirror, tracing their face, wishing it would change. A teenager hiding makeup wipes before anyone could find them. A young adult pretending to laugh at jokes that quietly hurt. Every fragment bled with longing. "This is the secret you carried." I felt my throat tighten. "And if I do, then you'll never need the pendant again." Her words struck like truth wrapped in prophecy. The pendant had never given me courage. It had reminded me of it. Tears welled in my eyes as I whispered, "I see you now." The reflection nodded and began to fade. Not vanish, but merge. Her outline shimmered, dissolving into light, and the glow from the pendant pulsed one last time before dimming completely. When the light settled, I was standing there, alone, but not lonely. The mirror no longer felt like a barrier. It felt like a window now open. I pressed my fingers to the glass.
Cool. Solid. Real.
The pendant, now dull and silent, rested against my chest like a relic of something that had finished its purpose. That night, I slept without fear. For the first time, there were no dreams of confusion or shadowy versions of myself. Just calm. But morning came with an unexpected weight. When I went to the mirror again, I saw subtle changes, softer lines, a gentler presence, an aura that felt undeniably feminine. I wasn't imagining it anymore. It wasn't an act. It was integration. At work, people treated me differently, not with confusion, but quiet respect. Even the man who had once mocked me seemed unsure now, like he couldn't find the words he'd used to hide behind. Clara noticed it too. "You seem lighter," she said one afternoon, sipping her coffee. I smiled. Maybe I am. But something still lingered, not fear this time, but curiosity. That evening, as I was tidying my room, the pendant slipped off its chain and fell to the floor. When I picked it up, I noticed faint words engraved along its edge, letters I'd never seen before. They read, "When you finally see her, you'll no longer need me." I ran my thumb over the words, heart full. I placed it carefully inside my jewelry box, not as a source of power, but as a memory of courage. Weeks passed. I began signing my name differently, not out of rebellion, but honesty. People adjusted. Some with surprise, others with warmth. Life didn't suddenly become perfect, but it became real. And then one day, while walking home, I passed a store window and caught my reflection. She looked at me with a quiet smile, and this time, our movements were perfectly in sync. The pendant may have been gone, but I had finally arrived. I whispered softly to the reflection, "You're home." And for the first time, the reflection didn't answer, because she no longer had to. The morning began like any other, yet everything about it felt different, lighter, more honest, as if the world had subtly aligned itself with who I had become. The city outside hummed with the rhythm of normalcy, cars, laughter, the rustle of trees, but within me, there was a quiet certainty that today was no longer about pretending to be someone I wasn't. Today was about existing as who I truly was. The mirror across my room caught the soft glow of sunrise. For years, that mirror had been my judge, my confessional, my adversary, but now it was my witness. I approached it slowly, heart full, fingertips brushing the frame like greeting an old friend. My reflection smiled. Her eyes sparkled not because they were perfect, but because they were alive. The traces of fear that had haunted her for so long were gone. In their place was something stronger, something beautiful, peace. I whispered, "Good morning," and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a ritual of hope. It felt like truth. In the kitchen, the radio played softly as I prepared breakfast. Nothing special, just toast and tea, but even these small motions carried meaning now. I wasn't hiding anymore. I didn't have to pause before answering the door or lower my voice when speaking. Every action, every word, had begun to settle into authenticity. As I sipped my tea, I noticed the pendant resting quietly in its box on the counter. Its once bright glow was gone, replaced by a faint shimmer when the light touched it. I picked it up gently, feeling its familiar weight. It no longer thrummed with energy, but warmth lingered, the kind that lives in something that once protected you, but knows it's time to let you go. "Thank you," I whispered to it, my voice trembling just enough to betray emotion. I wrapped it in a soft piece of silk and tucked it away inside the drawer, not forgotten, but finally at rest. That afternoon, I met Clara at the cafe. She was waiting by the window, her usual confident smile lighting the space around her. "You look at peace," she said, studying me for a moment. "I think I am," I replied, and I meant it. We talked about simple things, work, movies, plans for the weekend. Yet beneath the small talk, there was a deeper understanding. She could sense the shift in me. Everyone could. I wasn't performing anymore. As we left, she stopped me near the door. "You know," she said, "there's something incredibly brave about living as yourself. Most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid it." Her words stayed with me as I walked home under a pale pink sky. I thought about the boy who once stood trembling before a mirror, wishing he could disappear. I thought about the nights spent trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for him. And I thought about the moment when everything began to change, not through magic, not through force, but through acceptance. The transformation wasn't sudden. It was 1,000 tiny decisions layered over time. Every quiet yes to myself, every refusal to apologize for existing. When I reached home, I opened the curtains wide and let the last light of day pour in. The room glowed golden. Dust motes danced in the air like faint stars. I stood before the mirror once more, not out of vanity, but reverence. There she was, the woman who had waited patiently through years of silence, self-doubt, and fear. She wasn't an illusion or a dream. She was me, fully, unapologetically, finally. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to separate us into before and after. There was no Mr. and Mrs., no halves of a fractured soul. There was only one, complete, whole, alive. I smiled through quiet tears. "This," I whispered, "is who I was always meant to be." Outside, the wind brushed softly against the window pane, almost as if the world itself was exhaling with me. And in that perfect stillness, I knew the secret I had carried all along wasn't something to be hidden. It was something to be lived. The pendant may have been silent now, but its lesson remained. Courage isn't found in transformation itself. It's found in the choice to keep becoming, again and again, until every reflection feels like home. I turned away from the mirror, ready to step into the world. My steps were lighter, my heart unburdened, my name, myself, no longer a whisper, but a voice. And as I closed the door behind me, sunlight spilling over the threshold, I smiled. Because the story wasn't ending. It was just finally beginning. Cherry blossom,